Right, it's a bit windy out there for my microphone today, apparently. I just did a little test fit and it was rubbish. So I'm going to take a leaf out of Van Man's book here and right, that should do it. Right, the Chinese Grand Prix, what an interesting event that was for us. I mean, qualifying for the sprint race, I mean, for starters, let's talk about practice just a little bit. I think most of the teams got out there, got a run done, which was good. Yeah, sprint race weekends. I'm starting to like the sprint race weekends. I didn't think they would work properly without the reverse grid aspect. I thought that was the big attraction for me watching the junior formulas. But yeah, it's turned out to be quite good, hasn't it? Max and Lewis on the front row of the grid with a blowback to about 3 years ago. I mean, Max not been there for long, but in the grand scheme of things, but with the old firm on the front row. Everyone's weekend's predictions were thrown into chaos, including mine. For the sprint race, because, well, to use the words of Jeremy Clarkson,
that
Ferrari
just off.
And yeah, Lewis disappeared off in the clean air. That Ferrari looked extremely rapid, very, very, very rapid indeed. And well, that was his first victory for Ferrari. We won't call it a Formula 1 race victory because it wasn't a Formula 1 race victory, not yet anyway. Formula 1 sprint victory, and with Max behind him seemingly unable to do anything about it. Then we cut to race day, and wow, Piastri's the first one to the first corner this time.
That
McLaren
just off.
Turns out anyone in clean air this weekend I think would have fucked off like a real Mac. I'll talk about that a bit later. Some really good results across the board there. Good drive from the back from Ollie Behrman, Chow. We'll talk about him in the rookie watch segment. Green Wheelie Bins fell back to type at the back of the grid. I think a lot of the midfield teams are going to have this through the year, that there's going to be this track works for you, doesn't work for us. Point scoring opportunities will be, I think all the teams will have them to get that 8th and 9th spot, or say 7th down, because someone else we need to talk about. But before we get into my two watch segments, I want to talk about a couple of things that really struck me about this weekend. Well, there's two things to talk about, isn't there? First of all, it'll probably be on the thumbnail, I'd imagine. God, we're a tyre wear formula, aren't we? No matter what Formula 1 do to try and clean up dirty air from cars following, I mean, teams will deliberately make that air as dirty as possible because you don't want to give the car following you any advantage. And the ability of your car's aero and chassis package to turn on those Pirelli tyres. Now, don't at me in the comments. A lot of people are going to go have a go at Pirelli for this. I don't necessarily think it's Pirelli's fault here. Pirelli are trying to make tyres that work really well, and then after a certain point they fall off a cliff while being quicker than the compounds down harder than it. Seems like a simple task. Except it isn't. Aerodynamic load changes every year on the cars. No one particularly wants to run the Pirelli tyre test sessions with full house cars during the year when we have them. You have those unmarked tyres that we get for a couple of races during the season? Yeah, those ones. Let's try and do something about this. No, it's just unfortunate angle for the sun. Here's what it is. It'll work or it won't. So I think that my theory is borne out over the two race weekends, or the two races on the weekend, is that whichever car got out in front and on the clear air did its best impression of a Rimac and fucked off. All right, not so much Lewis the first race. That race is much longer. You know, perhaps Oscar chases him down. I don't know. But cars just can't seem to keep the tyres under them. And by the same token, Oscar's run out in clean air at a reasonable pace every time Lando got near him, either well, questionable whether there's some sort of papaya rules being thrown in here. But eventually you saw that the tyre wear got him. Both stints, his front left was blistered. Now, this track in particular, it was front limited, as they say. But it's just the thing. It's either rear limited or front limited, and whichever car seems to be most adaptable to find that balance is the one that's doing well. At the moment, that is the Mclaren. While this goes on, and this always seems to happen towards the end of a Formula, I mean, the cars get closer, but they're following so close that dirty air becomes a problem. We've stopped talking about how this whole Formula was devised, essentially, to get rid of the dirty air problems. It hasn't, and we're at the stage now that the cars are finally, what were they, some 3 seconds faster this year? I mean, no, the track was resurfaced, but the cars were as fast as the big wing monsters they replaced. And if the teams are worried about the airflow over the car, you know, if it's dirty air that comes off the back of the car, so be it. If they can make it dirty air without compromising the performance, I'm sure they will, because it's the car behind is just going to have dramas. And so if you've got for example, an papaya coloured Mercedes powered car behind you, and you are in a red car, and you can put out enough dirty air to make that papaya car lose its, let's say conservatively, 3/10 of a lap advantage in race trim. On most tracks these days, that's not fast enough. I mean, you need to be a clear second faster past the car in front of you. Now, it's not just the tyres, it's the braking zones. I mean, these cars stop so slowly that being later on the brakes, there's only so much opportunity to be later on the brakes. The better the brakes on the car is, the more the diminishing returns on how much of advantage you get from being late on said brakes, because you've still got to slow down, 700 odd kilos of Formula 1 car plus whatever inertia it's carrying forward. The shorter the fuel, the less time that you can, or the shorter the braking distance, obviously the shorter time you're on the brakes, and therefore the less time that you have to make a difference as a human operator on the brakes. So yeah, that is a wee bit of an issue. They say they want to make the cars lighter. That's just going to make that particular bit of it worse. I know it'll improve the tyre wear, but while we're in a battery formula, there's very, very little room there. That's what making these cars heavy, man. It's like, well, there's 700 odd kilos, and there's 100 odd kilo of battery in the car these days. We're not running the 500 kilo cigar-shaped cylinders that we used to run. They used to slide for days and had no downforce. Now, you could follow someone closely back then. It didn't matter. And even in the 80s, to a certain extent, alright, it was being in the dirty air of the car behind was starting to become a problem, but you could see how inefficient those cars were in the air. You'd see the vortices fly off the corners of the wings, and there's a slight amount of moisture that you don't see that so much anymore, you know, because the airflow's taken care of better. All those little spirals and vortices that form off the side of the car and off the side of the wings, they're all directed to increase air pressure above the diffuser, so the low air pressure from the diffuser gives you more suck down. Blown diffusers back in the day, it's all this sort of stuff, you know. Which brings us back to, it's a tyre wear formula. Whoever is going to be better on the tyres and can keep that tyre under their car for a whole qualifying lap, no matter where we are, is going to qualify well. And the better you qualify, well, just the better you are these days. I mean, other than Antonelli's drive storming through the field, I mean, we had none of that. We had some overtaking in China, but we didn't have that last deep into the points drive that Antonelli had in Adelaide. I keep calling it Adelaide, it's where the race should be. where the race was held in Melbourne. Yeah, I don't see how Pirelli fix it. I mean, I just hate seeing those cars out there doing 3-4 seconds a lap slower than they know they can, because they know it's quicker if they nurse the tyres. And if you pull a pit stop like Lewis did, I mean, like Lewis all but caught Max, but he was never getting past him. He was never getting past him once he lost that position, and the Ferrari couldn't keep its tyres under itself beforehand, and hence Max caught in the first place. So bit of work to do there for a few of the teams, and I'm with Tev Kravitz. I hate the tyre chat. It is the thing, but the other solutions are tyre ball, and tyre ball will just blow the cost of the series out of the window. You'll get a limited number of tyre providers. You'll get typically in Formula 1 2, and most categories 2, unless you're racing on the Nürburgring, then it's 132. But you'll get 2 tyre providers. They'll favour 1, maybe 2 teams each, and it'll essentially be a confidential tyre for those teams, and the other teams will have to suck it up, and whoever's new to the party will just get absolutely killed by Pirelli for the first couple of years. You know, I remember the days when it was Goodyear and Pirelli, and you know, Pirelli was the less favoured of the suppliers. They made a great qualifying tyre, and they had a good wet tyre, but it didn't matter. All the good teams were running on Goodyears, and we had some, and that was it. We had some competition in the Bridgestone days. I must admit, my interest in Formula 1 did fall off during that period a little bit. More to do with pay TV issues here in Australia. But yeah, what's the answer? So do we go full tyre wall? You know, we let teams approach tyre manufacturers, and it's like, hey, I want you to make tyres for my McLaren Mercedes, please, and only for my McLaren Mercedes. And if you make tyres for anyone else, well, they don't get they get a standard compound that you've come up with, not the confidential compound I expect you to come up with for us. So the other big topic on the weekend was dirty slots. I mean, who would have thought of all the people to be caught on the grid for having a dirty slot would have been Haas. Both Ferrari and McLaren came out straight away and said, nah, that's not us. It was Haas and Alpine are the 4 teams that were being looked at. And Haas actually came out and said they had to make some changes. Yeah, well, both their cars were pretty quick in the battle of the midfield there. Both did pretty well. I did quite a rant about this, but again, it got affected by the wind. Formula 1 is supposed to be the peak. I say as I go over a speed hump. It's supposed to be the peak of motorsport. It's supposed to be where you come to see the most technological marvels. It's where you come to see the fastest cars. Alright, that's sometimes the detriment of the racing. If you want close open wheel racing, I highly recommend going to watch IndyCar. Fantastic series. Absolutely fantastic series. However, that's not what we're here in Formula 1 for. I'm here in Formula 1 to watch cars go vroom vroom fast around the track, and to see all these gadgets. I remember active suspension back in the day, so I mean, that got banned, but not at the start of the season like this. It's the most recent example, the dual axis steering that the Merc come up with. Even they got a full season with the DAS, man. And it was like, alright, you get a full season, and the next season you can't do it anymore. That I'm kind of down with, you know. It's like, especially in a cost cap form, you don't want teams chasing active suspension. You don't want teams having to spend a shit ton of money on developing a couple of tenths of a second. Or if you talk to Mercedes, they reckon it was hundredths. So, well, I don't think they would have done it for hundredths, but you know, for a couple of hundredths of a second, an improvement on tyre warm up. I mean, go to my previous comments about being a tyre formula, perhaps DAS was a bigger advantage than we thought it was. But at the end of the day, it was banned, but they got a whole season. These flexi wings have caused so much, and the mini DRS, I mean the dirty slots, you know, it's people showing too much slot, you know, it's 2025, but you can't just go around flashing that much slot. I mean, it's plumber's crack sticking out here, and no one likes plumber's crack as a person who used to display it a fair bit. Bit of oversharing there, but never mind. So we go, we're going to go up here. Anyway, we were talking slot shaming, that's alright. I just find it difficult. Again, this is a cost cap formula. That's like teams are going to have to potentially pay to correct this. I know it's not going to be a huge amount in the grand scheme of things, but teams are potentially going to have to pay to correct this. They've gone down from a 2mm gap, which is, as someone pointed out, I think it was on Formula 1 TV, it's just like, it's a beer coaster, not even a beer coaster, down to the gap of a credit card. That's how much they want to reduce it. So they've reduced it to 0.75 this week. From Japan onwards will be 0.5. That's the most of your slot you're allowed to show. You cannot show any more slot than that, otherwise you will be charged with having a dirty slot. I think they should have been given to the end of the season. Hey, it's like they knew the rules, everyone knows what the rules are, give it to the end of the season. Alright, a few teams have dropped the ball. Alright, it looks a bit cheesy. It's like, alright, well, it's like, who cares? Someone's found a loophole in the rules. It's Formula 1 racing, it's not tax evasion, for fuck's sake. Some of Formula 1 racing might be tax evasion, I mean sponsorships and all that sort of stuff, but this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the slots here in particular. And I agree, it is cheesy, it looks like shit. Seeing that little gap there, you know, but given to the end of the season, especially if you've got your strugglers like Haas and Alpine onto it, give them all the help they can get. You know, it's alright, they're smart enough to find a spot in the rule and exploit it. And again, the change is to help the front of the grid, it's to help Red Bull, it's to help, you know, Mercedes or whoever else has been, you know, been complaining about the other teams and their dirty slots. How about we beat them out in the track and we come up with a counter development and catch up that way? Teams involved still have to spend money. It's the last year of a formula, let's just see it out to the bitter end anyway, and learn from that and add it to next year's car rules so they don't get away with this rampant dirty slottery. Fraud Watch this week, it's going to be taken up by one person, and that person is Liam Lawson. I don't want to be making this, I didn't want to be recording this, but here I am bloody recording it. Liam bloody Lawson. How slow is he this weekend? Now again, two schools of thought on this. Is that Red Bull literally that much of a shit box that only Max can drive it? Is Max that good? Do you know what? Yeah, he is. He probably is that good. I don't think he's got any too many dramas driving this thing. I think he'd be like Senna. You'd put him in anything and he'd get it right. He would fuck off like a Rimac. He'd fuck off at anything. Very Senna-like. I mean, Senna was nearly a lap quicker than Nakajima. Let's just be very clear. I think all of these boys that have been in this car are probably better than Satoru Nakajima was. Good old Nakajak. There's a throwback for you, those of you of a certain vintage like me. But really, I mean, what are Red Bull going to do with the lad? Is the car really that fucking hard to drive? Do you know what? I don't think so. I don't think so. Again, I'm going to simp for Danny Rick here. If he was generally that quick in that car at that Silverstone test, they thought, yeah, we're going to put him in the car, and that conversation at Spa where he come running away with that fucking flip-top grin from ear to ear, like he'd just been told he'd won the lottery, or in his case, he'd been told he'd be back in the Red Bull, and then that got shut down 3 days later when quite obviously Sergio's back has stepped in. Apparently it cost them a lot of money to buy Sergio out of his contract. Why the fuck they signed him up for so long, I don't know. There's another mistake on the Red Bull fucking carnage train, isn't there? I don't understand it. I really don't. It was Danny Rick that quick because he can drive that car still, you know? Has that Red Bull been that razor focused front sharp pointy car for so long now that Danny Rick would still drive it? I mean, let's face it, he was a couple of tenths a lap slower quali pace than Max towards the end there, but he wasn't this much slower. But yes, he was this much slower than Lando, so I'll allow it. But I mean, I think Albon not that slow. Too experienced to have such a high-profile teammate. Gasly, same. Sergio stood up to the pressure for 6 months, and then when it was very, very clear that he wasn't there to win a world championship, I think partly he threw his toys out of the pram, and partly he just lost his mojo. And now we've got Liam Lawson in there, who's in there after a grand total of 11 races in the shit bull, which is, if you listen to Max this year, the less shit of the two bulls. So he's coming out of the shit bull, 11 races, both times. I mean, all up over the whole time. Didn't beat Yuki, even with Yuki. All right, he had the odd race. He was quick, picking in the car from the year before, but last year's car, no better than Danny Rick. And they've gone and put him in this seat, and now 2 races in, even they have to be questioning. And it's like, oh man, this guy's the slowest yet. I mean, sure, Gasly was finishing in the bottom of the top 8, and so was Albon, and Sergio when he was at his best. Yeah, okay, he was up there finishing second, getting the second places that the team wants. But further down the track, it's just they Red Bull, for their sake, cannot have someone at the back of the grid doing this unless it's some masterful bullshit plan to tank the CFD and wind tunnel time rules, so they get more CFD and wind tunnel time for next year's car. Now apparently they update mid-season on point standings, so if they have a particularly shit start of the season, they will have more air tunnel time on next year's car. That is the only big brain way I can think my way out of this one, but that doesn't excuse what they've done for the last few years. Anyway, so Liam Lawson definitely still on the fraud watch list, but I'm not sure it's totally of his own doing. Ferrari get a pass mark this week. It was really, really good to see Lewis win that race. Like I said before, I'm not a huge Lewis fan, but whatever. It was good to see him win. Even Festi Esti had a good race this weekend. He's still on the list though for now, but he's he'll have to do that for a few more races for me. The FIA, well, they're still there. Slot gaps. Lance Stroll, both the Aston's pretty anonymous this week, but he's still on there. I don't care. He's still on there. He's Lance Stroll. He's got a lot of digging, to do to get out off my fraud list as that boy. Right, and rookie watch. Antonelli's the only one to really impress me so far. There's a bump there. Probably shouldn't go that way. So yeah, Antonelli's the only one to really impress me so far, rookie watch wise. I mean, Behrman come through on fresher tyres, passed a few people. Yeah, ciao. Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, no worries. Yeah, just pull out, dude. Don't worry about me. You'll be fine. Yeah, good drive from him. Bortoletto, car wasn't there for him this weekend. Jack Doohan, yeah, got himself in a bit of trouble. He's probably the least impressive of the rookies this week. Penalties in both races for argy-bargy infringements. The first one, I mean, what the fuck was he doing with that? Just trying to shake it down the inside, and only defence to that is the incentive that, you know, don't go for a gap, you're no longer a race driver. Well, with a 5 race limit on your, reportedly on your shoulders, from the man Flavio himself, I'd be making smarter choices with my car now in the race 2, the main race. It looked like he was making a smarter choice. However, that smarter choice meant that he was some seconds off the pace, or a couple of tenths off Gasly's pace, and therefore several positions behind Gasly reasonably quickly. Was up there with him in the sprint qualifying, main qualifying nowhere near. Yeah, all the good work that he potentially showed in Melbourne and in qualifying for the sprint race, all undone, and Alpine were disqualified anyway. So while we're talking of disqualifications, Ferrari back a bit. Fraud list. I don't think it's particularly fraud listing stuff. One car a little bit underweight, yeah, only a little bit. It wasn't George Russell levels of underweight like we had from Spa last year. However, underweight enough, and they have to draw the line somewhere. Same with the plank. I mean, they're trying to get every little last scrape of performance out of that car, quite obviously. Yeah, just unfortunate, but that just goes back onto the Italian reliability list of things, doesn't it? Is that they've potentially got the car there. I mean, obviously got the car there to have won the sprint race, and then lose themselves so dramatically in a couple of degrees of track change, a little bit more rubber down on the circuit, to have both cars disqualified at the end of the race. And Isaac Hadjar, really quick this weekend. Isaac didn't bin it. There or thereabouts with Yuki, even out qualified Yuki. Good stuff. That's what we want to see from the second seat. Now, he needs to stay there for 2 or 3 seasons. And if they had someone with 2 or 3 seasons in that Red Bull, Yuki, they might be doing better. Verstappen's even came out and said that it might actually be the inverted commas better car. Clarify here, he said faster car, not better car. There's this difference. There's a better car might be easier to drive, but not as fast. But a fast car is always going to be fast if you can drive it. And I think that's might be where Red Bull find themselves. It's a fast car, but there's only one person on the grid that can drive it. So, like I said, who knows what's going on with Red Bull. But that Racing Bull seems to be a competent car this year, and was right up there until there's, again, it's like, alright, they're not based in Italy anymore, but AlphaTauri, V-Carb, Toro Rosso, whatever you want to call them, my God in himmel, since Laurent Mekies has been there's been some interesting bloody strategies. Where did Laurent Mekies work before? Hang on, oh, I'm checking. And we are home. I was trying to think through the rookies. I've mentioned everyone. I've mentioned he who's not a rookie. I've mentioned Bortoletto. I've mentioned Doohan, Hadjar, and Behrman. Yeah, I got them all done. Rightio. So that leaves us with Japan coming up. Now, Japan also known to be quite tough on the tyres. Oh, I said last week I couldn't see a lot of difference in the race order coming up, and I still can't see any difference this week, other than unless it's going to be tyre related again, like here. If it's going to be whoever hits the tyre wear window, that's going to be the big decider on about how well this race weekend goes for a lot of people, I think. Jack Doohan needs to perform. That's a no-brainer, and Liam Lawson needs to perform. Those two boys. Jack, we already know Jack's in danger of his seat, but I really think with the momentum picking up around Liam, there's surely someone at Red Bull there is saying, what about Yuki? Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. There'll be a video up here. Now, this one's probably going to be a video from Law VS. I highly recommend you watch him, even if you watch 30 seconds of the video and click on it there, or let it click over. Helps my channel out a whole heap. So Go watch it. Highly recommend him. Great YouTuber. Anyway, keep smiling. I'll see you next time.